Hello, Avram. Are you there? I see motion, but I don't hear an Avram. Let me see if it's my fault. Audio. Avram. Nope, I'm not getting any sound from you, bud.
All right, I should be on the correct microphone now.
Yeah,
What?
there's some sound.
Okay, I should be on the correct microphone now. Okay.
Hello.
Hey.
I see you've gotten out of your costume.
So, yes, I have gotten out of my costume. It's a little too warm. Costume's a little too warm. Um, so I think um, we could talk about. Let's see. Well, I think the easiest thing. I know I don't like the Android 12, but I don't have a ton to say about it except that it just looks terrible. I think it looks terrible anyway.
It was
this
mostly a joke when I said that on Facebook.
but this might be worth a discussion. This is the new Raspberry Pi 02W that just came out on Thursday. So, not that you can really tell the difference between it and the regular Raspberry Pi Zero because they look pretty much identical, but we've done a bunch of stories on this. It's out now. You could get it. So it's could be something that folks might be interested in.
Yeah.
As a new development. So
sure.
Yeah, I think that would be the best. Otherwise, I did a big story about Windows 11 problems and how to fix them, but I feel like we've done that recently.
Yeah. I saw that one. Like, hey,
yes.
I got the heads up on that one.
yes, that's exactly. I was meaning to publish that weeks ago. The other thing I wish I had here to demo, maybe in a future week I will have it to demo, is that Andrew reviewed the Razer Zephyr.
I saw that.
And I'm going to get to borrow it, so maybe I will be able to wear it for a show one of these days, but I don't have it here at the moment.
So interestingly, for a little bit of inside baseball for people who are watching this live before all this gets cut off later, the live show got demonetized last week on YouTube.
Oh no!
How come? Because of our talk of the Zephyr.
Why?
Because we were talking about masks.
Wait, you can't talk about masks?
It doesn't look like it.
I don't understand. You can't talk about masks
at all. Their rules are getting more and more complicated. Yeah, I put in an appeal on it, but I thought that was interesting. It's the first time we've ever had.
Oh man, I'm sorry about that. I won't mention it again.
No,
I didn't realize that was
just interesting.
Forbidden.
Interesting. Yeah, weird, right?
I realized that was a forbidden conversation since we weren't really having a discussion about pro or anti mask, just about a particular model.
We weren't even talking efficacy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I won't mention. This sounds like a mess up on YouTube's part to me, but
I put in an appeal. Anyway. We'll see what comes of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was all very strange.
Google. Yeah, I mean, what can you do? Sometimes stuff just gets rejected, as Absolutely. I've found with my extensions repeatedly.
It's hard to stay ahead of whatever weird thing is in their heads at any given time.
Right. So anyway, I think the best thing is to talk about Raspberry Pi 02W right now. And everything else, yeah, makes sense.
Okay, sounds good. So I want to change the order of the show tonight.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Put gadgets and gaming back to back since they're both meta.
And, sure.
Right, because it's Oculus, all part of the meta thing, and then go to the Piltch point.
Seems that makes sense to me.
Okay.
That makes sense to me. I was just thinking that we have two things that are almost the same, that are very similar to each other, and talking about meta and then talking about metaverse.
So. Yeah. So we've got Facebook is now meta, and then the Project Nazaire and the smartwatch that will be gadgets, and then gaming will do Oculus, the name being retired and the stuff coming to that, and then we'll do Piltch Point, then we'll do MLB and whatever the other one is, TV prices.
Okay.
All right. Let me make sure, because now I'm second guessing myself on everything. Let me make sure that there's enough storage on here. For those of you who are watching live, we stopped in the middle of the show last week because we ran out of hard drive space. All right. All right, so record there. This week, Facebook is entering the metaverse, the MLB is ignoring extortion, and TVs are more expensive. It's Sunday, October 31st, 2021, and this is episode 608 of F5 Live Refreshing Technology, a proud part of the Tech Podcast Network. If it's tech, it's here. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or Twitter, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn, or a myriad of other options, through one of our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or of course on our website, PLUGHITZlive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are two ways that you can do that. The first is Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. You can go to f5live.tv/join us. There you can chat with us here in the studio. Give us your feedback on the topics as we talk about them. If you can't join us live, that's okay. PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, Piltch Point, PLUGHITZ Live Presents, and a whole lot more. And of course, you'll find all the ways to watch, listen, and follow along. All right, well, it's Halloween. We are back on Sunday. Things are both a little normal and a little weird all together. But how have you been this week?
All right, not bad. Some more product launches this week, which we can talk about. One major one that came on Thursday later. It's been okay week. I got to go out and do some nice trick or treating today with my kids. Fantastic. I was hoping to have like an RGB costume, RGB goggles on my costume, but accidentally broke one of the wires before I could go out, and didn't have time to like desolder and resolder. I'm really bad. I don't know about you, but I'm really bad at at like once something has been soldered and it's broken, getting the solder off to do it again or whatever is like I find nearly impossible.
Yeah.
I need some kind of really good solder sucker, but like they have ones that are sort of a vacuum thing. I would love to get. There's like I think there's one that's like $150 or $200. That's real expensive that would be expensive for a soldering iron, let alone a desoldering iron. But there is a like desoldering gun that you can get that like not only does it heat up the solder to liquefy it, but it actually has a thing in it that just sucks it out like a vacuum.
Yeah.
So if you want to desolder stuff, it's fantastic, but that's super duper expensive.
Sure.
So I haven't got one of those, but it's a pain because if I want to like unsolder something, I don't know. I've tried, for folks who know about soldering, which I don't know how many people our audience do. I mean, maybe many. There's the little wicks that you can get to try and get the solder to go off. Then there's the little like vacuum clicker things, and I've tried those, and they don't really work for me. But so I don't know.
Yeah, I've never
one of
had
those
luck.
frustrating things.
I've never had any luck, so I understand.
And now I don't have any place to do my soldering because my 3D printer is back there. I gotta find more space.
So speaking of 3D printers, I got a notification that Monoprice had one on sale, a resin printer.
Which one?
On sale for $79.
Oh, okay. So I can give you really quick advice here. Don't buy it.
I'll have one of those soon.
Oh wait, you bought the $79 one?
Oh yeah, I had to see it. Have you printed?
Okay, have you printed in resin before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got two of them over at Amrock.
Okay. For most people, I would really recommend against. Now, I say this by also saying that we just launched our best resin 3D printers page on Tom's Hardware this past week. But for people who are not really like, who are just getting into 3D printing, anyone who has children in the house, resin 3D printing involves using some really toxic, noxious, poisonous chemicals. And so you got to wear a mask when you're doing it. You got to wear gloves even after it's printed. You got to be to wash it off or whatever. So while you can get some really fantastic, some really good quality models out of it, the consequences of doing so, the ability to do so is much more difficult. So granted, both resin and FDM 3D printing has gotten really cheap now, but I mean, the printer behind me, the Elegoo Neptune 2, regularly goes for $159, and that's one that has it's FDM and is good. So it's not it's not that, I mean, the printer, like regular printing, the printer itself is no longer the expensive part.
Right.
It's the consumables. And even there, the consumables aren't that crazy unless you get, really into different colors and different materials. You can get a kilogram of FDM filament for $20, and that would last you quite a while. So it's not a horribly expensive hobby until you start, like any hobby, modifying, trying new things, going outside the box a little bit.
Sure. Well, I figured at $79, it was a fun one to add to my lineup.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, try it. Just make sure that you are in a ventilated room with rubber gloves and a mask and maybe a bunny suit or something.
Like the pajamas from the
what do they call it?
I know, I'm just
the bunny suit, the things that anyway, the ones that wear it like Intel when they're inside the clean room or whatever.
I'm messing with you, Avram. Anyway, it was a fun little thing. I'm excited to put my hands on it because I figured a $79 resin printer, I have to see this thing in action. Compared to our big expensive resin printer that we have at Amrock, I cannot wait to see how the same thing prints across the two devices. And at $79, I'm like, that's an experiment I'm willing to run. Anyway, it is Halloween. I'm going to let all of our people know that there's always the possibility, however slim, that some noise will happen in the background because we absolutely have trick-or-treaters still out. So there's always the possibility that we will get trick-or-treater noise during the show. But unlikely now that it's after 9 here on the East Coast. But we've got a lot to talk about, with our first topic being a bigger one than normal. So we're going to shift things up a little bit tonight, but we will be starting right now like normal. This week's Nifty Gifties on F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, a new Xbox, crossing your... A number of commentators that I watch regularly believed that the platform was changing its name. And so the corporation Facebook is changing its name. The platform Facebook is not. The corporate... And part of that is because that's confusing, right? Because Facebook owns Facebook, but Facebook owns Instagram. What? So that's no longer the case. The corporation is now called Meta, and almost all of the products underneath are maintaining their names. So Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're all keeping their names except for one, which we'll talk about in the next segment. But why Meta? Well, because Facebook's been messing around with the concept of a metaverse, which I feel like they think is new. It's not, but that's okay. The biggest question that I've seen is, what is a metaverse? Well, depending on exactly how you define it, even Facebook itself currently could, on the loosest of terms, be considered a metaverse. It's simply a virtual environment in which you can interact with other people also in that virtual environment. It doesn't have to be virtual reality by the loosest of definitions, but in modern times, it absolutely is. And Facebook has been getting heavy into virtual reality. We have actually seen the metaverse product in action a couple of times at past Facebook events, but never referred to that way. We've seen, Zuckerberg recently did an interview in a virtual environment that we now know was the metaverse product. And that's the big thing. The company is changing its focus to put a lot of focus into this metaverse concept. Like I said, there's a lot of confusion about exactly what's going on, but I don't know. I don't know about you, Avram. Obviously, you have different channels that you tune into. No, I don't mean television. I mean just like on social and stuff. There's different things that you see than what I see. Everything I saw, people didn't seem excited. The best case scenario was people didn't care. The worst case scenario was people were comparing it to like a 60s dystopian sci-fi film.
Look, I mean, you can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is that Facebook has been, even in the past week, has been in the news again for all kinds of negative behaviors, doing things to sort of keep people enraged by highlighting content that generates anger and things like that, or allowing, not doing anything or much to crack down on all kinds of, negative, let's just say negative content on Facebook. So you could say this is a distraction. On the other hand, my thought of this is that it's a lot like Google when it changed its name to Alphabet, right? Google Incorporated owned Google and all the other things that Google has, like Nest, right? And then they decided,
outside of Google, because there were things that the Google, the search and ad brand didn't touch. That's why they went and changed the upper echelon. Same thing here.
Right. So they're changing their Facebook is a brand that Meta owns, and now Google is a brand that Alphabet owns. So there you have it. Does it matter? I mean, does it? Not really. Now, the interesting thing is the first thing I heard when I heard that the name was Meta, was that there used to be a company called Meta that made AR glasses. They were and I hadn't heard from them in a while, and it turns out that they basically went out of business in 2019, although they've now relaunched as with a new name, Campfire. But Meta um, was a company that started in 2013 that had um, an office in Silicon Valley, which I actually visited once. That was a wild visit because I had a really hard time finding the entrance. Their office was located on some place where the guy who owned the land or whatever liked to collect tanks, old tanks. And so there were like all kinds of decommissioned like tanks and military vehicles.
I was going to make you clarify because it could be water tanks or it could be
No, no,
pow
no. I
pow
mean
tanks.
like I
Okay.
mean military tanks, right?
Okay.
Um and uh right. So but anyway, that was neither here nor there. So they had some very impressive um AR glasses, and I remember I did a demo once with them where they showed me how you could like this was even before HoloLens was a thing, like you're talking 2013, 2014, um,
Okay.
where they would have something where you could train a surgeon by having them perform like on a sort of virtual dummy, and
Mm-hmm.
just really, really interesting stuff. Um, although I'm not sure how many people ever bought the Meta 2, which came out in 2016. It was declared a company was declared insolvent in 2019. A company called MetaView bought the assets, uh, and then in 2021, the company name was changed to Campfire and said it plans to release a collaboration system for design and engineering, but I don't know if they're doing more hardware. But anyway, I heard this. I was like, oh, wait, does this have. You're talking about the metaverse. Does this have anything to do with the meta reality glasses? I guess not. But, but anyway, meh, okay. I mean, I don't like companies coming along and kind of changing their name to something that's very generic because
Yeah.
then they kind of um, dilute the meaning of other things that use that name. So, like,
Right.
what about all of our meta tags and metadata?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. I don't like it as a
Yeah.
name because not
I'm not a fan
because
either.
it's not cute, but because um, it's it could easily be confused with,
Right.
we talk about like, oh, did you put all the right metadata on your web page? Oh, there's
Right.
metadata in this image or whatever.
Right.
So now people are going to think like, oh, that's data for Facebook.
Like people
No,
believing
it's
that
yeah.
app is short for Apple. A lot of people believe
Oh, I
that.
didn't know that people actually thought that.
Yeah, a lot of people
What
think that.
what gets me about app is when they start to use it at restaurants. Like don't do that. You ever go to like, one of those they only do it at a certain kind of restaurant too. It's like at Applebee's or something
Yeah, I was just gonna
or
say
TGI Fridays where they try to be all I don't know, cute and
yeah.
they say,
Apps and
"Oh,
zerts.
we've got special on our apps." And no, 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 don't do that. But 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 anyway, yeah. Uh, look, all right. So they feel that they need to do this because they're building an empire or whatever, and maybe also the Facebook brand is tarnished. So maybe they think this untarnishes some of the other brands like Instagram or I don't whatever else they're building their VR stuff. So okay, whatever. I mean, I think this has received too much attention. The Facebook wants attention for this. We should not we should not give it to them.
Well,
Like,
the thing that I'm
it's
interested in is the actual metaverse itself, not the renaming.
yes,
That's
right.
fairly innocuous, like you said. They own more things.
Right.
This was inevitable.
Yeah,
But
I
the actual
mean,
metaverse
they're
itself, it seems like everybody is looking at this. In my view, which might be a
mm,
different ecosystem,
mm,
but what I
mm.
saw, nobody seems to have responded positively to this.
Well, so I mean, first of all, we've seen this sort of. Is this supposed to be sort of like Second Life, uh,
Kind
or
of.
the life that people
PlayStation
have in
Home.
Ready Player One?
PlayStation Home.
So
In fact,
this is
in fact,
basically
in the video that
yeah.
Zuckerberg showed, which, by the way, the barbecue sauce, best part of the whole thing. Anyway,
Yes,
um,
right. That he uses as a bookend.
yeah,
He uses sweet
this is
baby
where
raised barbecue sauce as a bookend.
humans keep the barbecue sauce, right? Uh,
Yes.
but the video that he showed, where he's like, when you come in, you start in your home location, and I'm like, oh yeah, this looks just like PlayStation Home, and nobody cared.
I mean, look, I actually think there is a market for something like this, and if anyone was going to accomplish it anytime soon, it would probably be Facebook, because Facebook has the numbers, it has the people, it has the platform. I'm not saying this is a good thing, um, but I think there is. I mean, certainly people want to do more in terms of online collaboration and online meetups. Um,
Sure.
Google perhaps could have been a center for this, but Google decided that it doesn't want to compete in social really, um, when it killed Google Plus. So I think Facebook has become a monopoly largely because other companies have sort of dropped out of trying to compete.
Yeah.
Twitter is sort of a different thing. So yeah, I think they have a shot with this to get people to use it. It does sort of sound, the idea of people spending their life in virtual reality sounds like somewhat of a dystopian nightmare, but
Sure.
it's not it's not too different than how, I mean, let's think about what people are doing today, right? They are spending a lot of time on Facebook. They're just not wearing goggles to do it. They are spending a lot of time hanging out with other people in virtual space when they game, when they play Fortnite, all this stuff. So, this is just sort of the next lot. That kind of thing is the next logical step. And I can totally see people doing it. On the other
Yeah.
hand, Facebook is has the numbers and the resources to do this better than anybody to see success in this area, but it's also very uncool with the cool kids right now.
Sure.
So I'm not
And
actually sure if they can succeed, because they went from being a college hipsters site to being an old people site in
right.
a space of a few years.
Mm-hmm. And not everybody is, even internally, not everybody's believing that Facebook can succeed with it. Um, they the CTO of Oculus, John Carmack, who also is a co-founder of id Software, said, I don't know. During his presentation at the event, he was like, I don't know. I'm gonna back it, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like this is the right approach, which was incredible. And then quickly like backtracked because I think he realized that he was on a Facebook stage, um, and said that if they can focus on meaningful connectable things like Minecraft or Roblox, then there might be a chance for success. But as it stands, he's like, no, I don't think so. But the good news is that even with the this new focus on the metaverse within VR, You know, like John said, you gotta focus on things inside. It can't just be PlayStation Home. And so they did show off some stuff. They talked about Project Nazaire, which is AR glasses. We haven't seen them. We haven't heard a whole lot. We've always known, we've known for a couple of years that Facebook was in this space, but they've never talked about it. And they talked about um, AR glasses that would kind of be complementary, right, to the VR, because some of what we saw in the VR world, Zuckerberg pulling up Messenger, could also be accomplished in the real world with augmented reality glasses. It's one of the things that Microsoft showed off with Skype on the HoloLens years ago now, right? And now there's also a possible smartwatch that's in the works. So their focus hasn't switched entirely to this, I guess is my point. So I mean, at least they're not abandoning everything in the search for the metaverse. I don't know.
See, the fall of AR. I don't know if it's a fall of AR, because AR on your phone and AR on, in certain capacities is very much a thing. But
Absolutely.
the fall of the AR glasses as a future that we were all trying to get to seems like, I don't know, it saddens me, because if you asked me a few years ago, I was like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to be wearing my AR glasses everywhere I go.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to help me remember things and people and conversations, and it's going to be great. And then the Google Glass came out, which was a really half-hearted effort in the first place.
Yeah.
And then what it exposed was that people were deadly unhappy and afraid of the surveillance of it.
Right.
You could talk about people thinking that the folks who were engaged in their glass were jerks or whatever, but I think what people really didn't like about Google Glass was the fact that you were wearing a camera on your face, right?
Sure.
So that raised the ire of a lot of people. Hey, I'm being watched, right? So I think
we've got an article from 2013 that there was an organization called Stop the Cyborgs. That organization had created stickers that companies could put on their doors and their windows that basically said Google Glass banned here. And there was at least one legislator in West Virginia who was trying to pass legislation to ban things like Google Glass. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of that kind of concern.
Yeah, and I don't see that even though we don't have Google Glass, which, by the way, not that many people had a Google Glass. What did it, maybe 5,000 people get one? It wasn't, the publicity was far outweighed the actual usage of it. But, after that, we haven't really seen a great push to give people, we've seen companies sort of come out with things like HoloLens, where they then say, yeah, you can't really wear it outside. You got to wear it around the office. It's so expensive. Right. No regular person can buy it. So,
they weren't designed to be consumable.
I don't know if there's,
but we've got Meta. We've got Meta doing this Project Nazaire. We know that Apple's been working on an iPhone-powered AR glasses, and I'll tell you, the response to the Ray-Ban stories, which while not AR glasses really, they were covert spy cameras. There didn't seem to be any major negative response to those the way there were to Google Glass.
Yeah, I mean, my 2 cents on this is that unfortunately, we don't have a lot of privacy out in a public space
Right.
in the first place. I mean, I certainly don't like the idea that I think like anybody else, if you were talking to your friend and they're like, hey, wait a second, I hope you're not recording this, right? But,
The
and maybe that need,
from Futurama, the iPhone.
yes. I mean, there's a great episode of Dark Mirror
Mm-hmm.
where it's the near future and everybody records everything in
Yeah.
their memory storage and can play it back at any time. And it shows just how terrible it is to actually be able to have access to all of photographic memory of everything and
Right.
accessible to other people too. So actually, when you think about it, yeah, I see the objections. I don't know how we get around those. Is there a way to make it so it just doesn't record anything? Like you can't take pictures, you can't record, but you can use this for AR. I don't know.
I don't know.
I
It'll
don't know if there's I don't know if there's a
it'll
way
be
of doing that convincingly.
it'll be interesting to see what this kind of next generation looks like, right? Because the next generation, what Meta is talking about here is that the actual electronics will be no more than 5 millimeters thick, and so it's not going to be like, hey, look, I'm a Google Glass. It's it's going to just look like glasses, and that's what Apple's been talking about as well. So this next generation could be very different and very interesting. So it'll be interesting to see how people respond to it if that future ever actually materializes, which I think you and I have had off-air conversations. Neither of us are particularly convinced that that future will actually materialize for some of these reasons. So I guess we'll see. We've got, I warned you, things were going to be a little different because we're going to keep talking about Meta in just a second. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Loot Crate. Whether you're a gamer, anime fan, or pop culture aficionado, Loot Crate has got a crate for you. They curate a bundle of collectibles, apparel, figures, and more that you can't find anywhere else. Crates get delivered to your door. It's like getting an awesome birthday present from yourself every month. And to learn more about the crates that are available and discounts that are going on right now, you can go to f5live.tv/lootcrate. All right, so let's continue on this topic. In this case, we're going to talk about Oculus, which, of course, if you're talking about a metaverse, right, a virtual VR environment from Facebook, Oculus is going to be a big part of that. Kind of. As it turns out, they've decided to retire the Oculus brand, the brand that is, for most consumers, synonymous with virtual reality, which is an interesting move in my view. But I think I understand what they thought they were up to. I think what they see is this is the core. This is the thing that makes the metaverse possible. This is the thing that Meta makes. And so the Oculus Quest is officially going to be called the Oculus Quest from Facebook is officially going to be called the Meta Quest, and the Oculus app is going to be renamed the Meta Quest app. Effective soon. So that's a surprise to me because Oculus kind of, from a brand perspective, is kind of like iPad almost in that it kind of means VR for a lot of people. Not for us, but for a lot of people, they don't even know that the HTC Vive exists outside of our occasional talking about it.
Yeah, the other problem here is that isn't Oculus not been soiled with some of the negativity of the Facebook brand?
Kind of. And the little bit of soiling that has happened, that's the next part. The little bit of soiling that has happened was when Facebook required Oculus to require a Facebook account. So let's use new names. When Meta required the Oculus hardware to require a Facebook account to be able to install any apps on it, that was the only soiling. And people disliked it so much that there is an unofficial third-party firmware and operating system build online for the hardware that my brother has to get around the Facebook login. Everything else works, but it gets you around the Facebook login. And so Meta has announced that Facebook is out next year. That requirement's going to go away. They're working on removing it from the requirement list now. Apparently they heard that everybody hated it.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, they're calling attention by renaming it Meta. They may be calling attention to its relationship to Facebook again.
Right.
So, I mean, on the other hand, they have been the dominant force in VR. Although I think HTC has done a pretty good job, but
I agree.
As far as just, I'm sure in terms of sales and support. So, yeah, I mean, we will have to see whether this has a negative impact on the brand or sales, but it probably, I think, obviously they're also trying to grow. The most interesting thing that I saw here is that GTA San Andreas is coming out.
Yeah.
So
specifically designed for VR on the Quest hardware.
Is that the killer title we've been waiting for? I don't know.
I feel like it would be personally traumatizing to have a first-person perspective of carjacking and beating up hookers. That seems traumatizing to me.
I'm gonna admit complete ignorance here in that I have never played a GTA game.
Okay.
So they seem not to sound all like a school marm or whatever, but
there's a phrase you don't hear often.
I'm not sure what not to be like wagging my finger at people for the games that they like to play or whatever. I don't know. It didn't appeal. That kind of thing doesn't appeal to me.
I'm totally with
personally. You. So I just remember years and years ago, one time, my biggest memory of GTA is years ago, when my wife and I were, had been dating a year or two. I remember maybe the first year we went to Christmas at my sister-in-law's house, and her son was like 13 at the time. And one of their guests was like, your son is playing Grand Theft Auto, right? And she was like, yeah, what's that? It's like, that's a game where you beat up prostitutes, right? Your 13-year-old is beating up prostitutes. And she was like, oh, I didn't know what that was about. So a good story of watch what you allow your kids to play. In other words,
for sure.
Now that kid is, to tell you how long ago that is. Now that kid is 30.
Yeah,
it's not a particularly has 4 children of his own. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people love the GTA games. I don't really know much about them. I know
lots of people who have played and enjoy those games. To me, doing it in VR is going to be a different experience, though.
Yeah, so I have no idea, but what it does sound interesting to me is that they've taken a popular game and put it into VR, which is not something that has happened too much. I can't really name any others. Now
where they've taken an entire existing game and ported it for VR versus like Half-Life Alyx or something like that, where they have taken the franchise and created a VR title around it, which is not quite the same as taking Half-Life 2 and putting you in a VR headset and sending you off into the world.
I mean, whoever can do a VR, get permission to do Minecraft VR is going to be golden, because holy cow, is that addictive? Like my son is super addicted to Minecraft, and all of his friends are super addicted to Minecraft, and this has been going on now for like what 10 years. So, um, you know, something like that, which has just incredible replay value. If that could be put into VR, then they'll really have something. But hey, look, they've taken a title, an adultish title that people like to play, and they put it into VR. That must mean something for VR, although I don't know if it means a lot. Uh, I
Yeah.
do also know that GTA has been on version 5 for like what 8 years, or just some ridiculous amount of time
Yes.
now. Uh, so
And the
my
original
prediction is,
trilogy is getting a
yeah,
remake, is getting a remaster, and San Andreas is coming to VR. There is no 6 in the works. That is where I
well,
uh so somebody
by
in
the
the
time it
chat
comes out,
room somebody in the chat
yeah,
room said Microsoft Minecraft VR is semi already a thing.
really, I have not. I would love to know where that is. How you do that? If I hope they're not talking about Minecraft Earth, uh, which was the Minecraft AR for your phone that
Minecraft.net
has been
slash
discontinued.
ENUS slash VR. Explore Minecraft in VR. Get right inside the world of Minecraft with virtual reality.
Wow. Okay, it must not be that popular then, because no, I've heard of it. Well,
Yeah,
let's
I've
not mention this in front of my son. He will never come out for air if he had a VR headset to do Minecraft.
yeah, good
We'll
good
never
call.
see him again.
You can
We'll
you can
never
already
see him
play
again.
it.
It's bad enough
You
now.
you can already play it on Oculus. Uh,
Mhm.
obviously, Oculus uh, in quotes. Um, all right, I am getting all kinds of comments in here. Uh, uh, unfortunately, there's a dialogue over it, so I'm looking through a half haze. Also, it sounds like GTA VR is going to be mostly for the role playing aspect of the community. That's interesting. Uh, some ordinary gamers actually slept in Minecraft for 6 months and continues to sleep in it now. Oh, okay. There's lots of stuff happening in chat right now. Um, GTA role playing
That's
is
great.
huge. We've got 2 different topics happening, one on
That's
YouTube and
that's
one
great.
on Twitch.
I'm gonna look into this, but I'm definitely not gonna tell my 9-year-old about it, because if I tell him about, if there is a, we don't have an Oculus headset, Oculus or Meta headset anyway, but he would demand one or find some way to get one if I told him there was a way to do Minecraft in VR.
It's also available on the
Um,
Windows mixed reality headsets. Anyway.
ah, for the 5 people that have them, yeah.
Oh,
But
that poor platform.
but
Anyway.
by the time GTA 6 comes out, people won't be driving cars anymore anyway. It'll just be all self-driving cars. You'll have to steal a self-driving car.
Oh, that's pretty funny. That concept is wildly amusing to me. Uh, all right. Obviously, I have to pull up the chat over here now since lots of stuff is happening and I can't actually read it over there. So, if for those of you who are watching live, plughitslive.com/join us. Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can chat with us, give us feedback on the topics while we talk about them, like people on both YouTube and it looks like Twitch are doing. Uh, so one of them is Adam, my brother, who I mentioned earlier, who has the altered stuff for the Oculus. He's the one who's telling us about GTA, I think. Uh, nope. Somebody on Twitch is doing that. It might be Alante. It might all be staff members. Anyway, who aren't in the studio tonight. Anyway, it's all very interesting. They've got they are still like focusing on content, which is what John had mentioned, was that you needed content for this whole concept to work. There's also apparently a lot coming to Beat Saber, which Adam will appreciate. They said, quote, we've got a lot of high profile artists coming in 2022 or something like that. And then they played a 12-second nothing trailer, which was the most disappointing part of the entire event. But that's a good thing. An amazing lineup of artists is what the quote was. So it's interesting. Lots of stuff outside of the direct metaverse still coming to the hardware, which for me was a fear, was that they would lose that. But everything could go over to HTC, and I think we'd all be okay. But obviously, we will be keeping an eye on all of this going forward. The meta rename, the metaverse, all of this stuff coming to what used to be called Oculus. We'll keep an eye on all of it, because obviously this is an evolving story that's just getting started now. This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it's available for almost all of your devices, and you can get a special price and a 31-day money-back guarantee right now by going to piltchpoint.live/PureVPN. Oh, your drumming made me laugh. I wasn't prepared for that. All right. So, it is literally the last day of Techtober. And this week brought us another product announcement.
Yes. So, also this week, by the way, I should mention that I think there was... We also had, we also had some information about Intel stuff this week. But let's talk about the important announcement from Thursday. This is the new Raspberry Pi 02W single board computer. So for those of you who have not been watching our show religiously, and why haven't you been? You might not know that Raspberry Pi is a huge phenomenon, with over 40 million of these boards sold, of Raspberry Pi boards sold in the last 9+ years that Raspberry Pi has been out. There are many models of Raspberry Pi, and this is the latest one. So previously there was the Raspberry Pi 0 and 0W, which came out, I think the 0W was 2017. And those looked identical to this physically, same ports, every layout, everything, but they were a mere single core processor with 512 megabytes of RAM. So the 02W adds upgrades the processor to quad-core ARM Cortex A53. So that makes it significantly faster than the old 0. Now, why would you want a 0 as opposed to a more full-size Raspberry Pi like the one that I have in this case here? Try to dig out a bare Raspberry Pi, but I don't seem to have one within arm's reach at the moment. Well, it fits into a lot more spaces. It's less expensive. This is going now for $15. It has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, although only 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, 802.11n, not 802.11ac or or the new Wi-Fi 6. But you can do quite a bit with this. The original Zero worked for doing some game emulation. You could use it. You could build your own sort of Game Boy style console with it. This can emulate more. This can emulate more significant games. So where the previous one, maybe it could do, maybe it could do a little bit, a little bit of emulation of older stuff. This can actually do, I think, like a PS, the equivalent of a PlayStation 1 emulation, where the previous model could not at all do machine learning. This can do object recognition at a frame rate of about 1.75 frames a second. So if you're pointing it at faces or objects or whatever, you can use it for that. So it is a noteworthy upgrade. It is still 512 megabytes of RAM, unfortunately, because the RAM and the processor are all one unit, so one on top of the other. So they couldn't easily get more RAM into the upgrade. Other than that, what you have here is what you've had on the prior model, on the Zero and Zero W. And the difference, by the way, is that the Zero has no Wi-Fi and costs $5. The Zero W has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth that costs $10. And then this is the Zero 2W that's $15. And no, there's no Zero 2 without Wi-Fi, but they wanted to be consistent. So in the naming, so what you have here is two micro USB ports, one of which is for power only and one of which is for data. You have mini HDMI out for your video. You data is stored on the micro SD card slot here. That's what you boot off of. Obviously, you can run Raspberry Pi OS on this, which is Raspberry Pi's version of Debian Linux, but you can also run many other operating systems like versions of Ubuntu. And over here, they don't come pre-soldered, but you can solder them, are the 40 GPIO pins, which allow you to, once you put solder pins into them, use it to attach an entire huge ecosystem of Raspberry Pi hats, which are called, HAT stands for hardware attached on top. And you can use it for things like lights, motors, sensors, RGB screens, LED matrices, all kinds of fun stuff off of this little computer, which is significantly smaller and cheaper than a regular Raspberry Pi, which the base model, which we discussed last week, the Raspberry Pi 4 1 gigabyte, goes for $35. So this is $20 cheaper than that. It's about a third of the size, and it also uses significantly less power in that, where that is maybe using, maybe it's using, close to an amp just to idle. This here will do, I'm looking at our power consumption numbers. It has very, very low power consumption. So at idle, this will do about 250 milliamps, and under extreme stress, like running a Strasberry, which is like, which is just basically maxing it out, it will use 580 milliamps. So very, very low power. You can power this very easily off of a USB port from your laptop. So what would you do with this? You could use it to build robots. You could use it to build an AI security camera. You can attach an official Raspberry Pi camera to the camera slot right here. You can use it for game emulation. You can use it as a little tiny computer for web surfing, although with 512 megabytes of RAM, it's not great as a desktop. But you can do that if you want to. Also, you can overclock this. We found it was really easy to get this up to 1.4 from the 1 gigahertz stock speed up to 1.4 gigahertz with just a cheap heatsink on it. So very easy for you to get a little bit of extra performance out of the Raspberry Pi 02W, which should be available a lot of places now for $15.
Wow, that's a decent upgrade for a $5 change in price. It is a shame that the
Yeah,
Wi-Fi is only 2.4N though.
yeah, they haven't. I mean, to really keep it simple and keep it. I mean, this is the Raspberry Pi Zero line is extremely popular among Raspberry Pi people because among Raspberry Pi fans because it's so inexpensive and low power and small, so it's easier to throw into products like robots. Uh, of course, with the advent of the Raspberry Pi Pico, some of the things that people were using Zero for, they're now using Pico for because if they just needed it to be a microcontroller, the Pico is $4 and it has analog to digital functionality, so it's good for it's a good replacement for a for an Arduino or something like that. But this is a full but the 02W, just like the Zero before it, is a full-fledged Linux PC. I have somewhere off behind me a Game Boy like case for Pi Zero. You stick it in there and it basically turns and gives you like you run whatever emulators you want on it and it will run Game Boy games or whatever emulation you want. But there's performance limitations. This if I stuck this in the same case, I would probably I'd be able to emulate something like a PS1 or better stuff. Of course, if you move up to Raspberry Pi 4, you're going to get even better emulation, the ability to at least do a Nintendo 64, and you are going to get better performance from AI. You're going to get something like maybe 3 or 4 frames per second of image recognition instead of 1.75. But the cost, the size, low power requirements, low heat make this good for a lot of projects. What one year I did for my staff was I went and I got everybody Raspberry Pi Zero Ws as like holiday presents, and I just went and I put like a micro SD card with like a little holiday greeting on it, and then I gave them each their like virtual card on it, and then but the trick was in order to see my greeting, they had to actually like boot it up and try it. So, and that was a very affordable set of holiday gifts for me, particularly because at one point Micro Center was selling the Zero W for $5, so which is the same price as the Zero non W. Uh, so, so that that's a good. It's definitely a less expensive sort of starter Pi for people than than the original Pi, which is $35 now. As we discussed last week, you used to get 2 gigabytes for $35. The price went up to $45 for 2 gigabytes, but you can still get the 1 gigabyte Pi for $35. By the way, just to follow up on our discussion from last week, we had a episode of the PiCast show, which is another show that I host, which is only about Raspberry Pi, on Thursday to talk about this new announcement. And we had Raspberry Pi founder and CEO Evan Upton on, and we asked him about the price increases, and he told us he does not expect the price of anything else to increase.
Okay, that's good because we had that conversation last week. Was do we think anything else is going to get hit by this?
So. Yes. So we got to talk to the leading authority on whether it will, and he said he does not expect it. So
that's good.
And he also said he expects to be able to fulfill orders. he expects to,
Even more
he doesn't
important.
expect major he doesn't expect major shortages of anything, although they are going to concentrate more on delivering Pi 4s than delivering last generation Pi 3s, which they still make. So there may be people may have problems getting old fashioned Pi 3s if they
Gotcha.
want to buy a new Pi 3 today, which as a company they almost never stop end of life things. They have a lot of industrial clients who buy these sorts of things and pop them into products that they're making, so they don't want to leave those companies out in the lurch, so they will continue making, like they still make the Raspberry Pi 2, they still make the Raspberry
Right.
Pi A plus and B plus. There's no good reason for a normal person to buy that stuff because it's not cheaper. So if you're buying a Raspberry Pi, there's no reason to buy a 3 instead of a 4. Right?
Right.
The 4 is more powerful and it costs the same amount. But I mean, in this case, the Pi Zero W is going to continue to be $10, and this is going to be continue to be 15. So there's an argument there about if you don't need the quad core, you could save $5. But um, but I think the key message there is that they are going to be able to um, continue to make, continue to really deliver with the huge demand that is out there for these products.
Mm-hmm.
Some folks have already gotten their 02s, and I saw a project just today where somebody took their 02W and they are using it as a YouTube subscriber counter. They have it set up
Sure.
to with like a 7 segment display, just showing how many YouTube subscribers they have at any given moment. Um, and again, that's a good use of something. I mean, granted, for that they probably could have gotten away with the original 0W, but
Almost certainly.
um, but that's a good use of a 0 series because you're not using that much power, so you're not wasting a ton of electricity just leaving it there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's small and you can put it in a compact little box. Um, so anyway, these are out. Definitely a great addition to the Raspberry Pi lineup. And as always, I say if you don't have a Raspberry Pi, you should get one. Uh, this is not a bad first Raspberry Pi for someone, although my recommendation is probably to go for the $35 Raspberry Pi 4, 1 gigabyte, and to get it in a kit that comes with other accessories that you might want to use with it.
Gotcha. And I imagine you've got all kinds of more
Yep,
information on
we
this.
have a review, we have an overclocking guide, we have some other stories about it, and we're working on even some more. So definitely check it out at tomshardware.com.
Fantastic. Well, as always, Avram, I always appreciate you bringing these things. I had heard about this, partially because obviously I follow Tom's Hardware, but I had heard about it elsewhere, but I didn't have a ton of details on it. So I always appreciate it, and I look forward to what we talk about next. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by Malwarebytes. Whether you use a PC, a Mac, or a mobile device, Malwarebytes Premium is the company's strongest protection ever. It fights threats that traditional antivirus software can't stop. It actively blocks threats like worms, dialers, rootkits, bots, and a whole bunch more. And you can use your computer and mobile devices with confidence and peace of mind. To learn more and to get a special price, you can go to f5live.tv/malwarebytes. Obviously, we know hacks are a constant these days, but not all hacks are created equal. This one, you're going to shake your head at all the way through the story. So here's what happens. You've got this guy, Joshua Straight, and he's been illegally accessing video from Major League Baseball, the National Basketball Association, National Football League, National Hockey League, and then stealing the video, the live video, and then putting it behind his own paywall for which he charges access. Now, that alone is a stupid idea, but it's not terribly uncommon. If you're watching us on Twitch, you're coming off of an infrastructure that was famous for illegal rebroadcasts. Justin TV was the place to watch WWE pay-per-view. But this is where it gets really dumb. This guy then contacts the MLB and tells them that he has an active exploit and says, I want money for this bug. He contacts an executive of the MLB and tries to essentially says, I want money for this bug. The one that he's using to actively exploit and take the video and rebroadcast. The executive says, well, we appreciate that you're bringing a bug to our attention, but we don't have a bug bounty program. This guy says, oh, well, there should be a meeting of the minds. You should be more grateful that I would be bringing this to your attention. The guy's like, oh, I'm grateful. There's just nothing I can do about it. He says, well, maybe what I'll do is I'll take this information to the news. And the executive says, okay, how much money do you want? He says, 150 grand. Now, if you know anything about bug bounty programs, anything more than a hug and a thank you is a surprise. 150 grand is ridiculous because now they know that there is an exploit. They don't know what it is exactly, but they know it's out there and they know what it's being used for. So their IT department is already looking for it. Anyway, my guess is by the time this conversation was done, they had fixed it. Either way, the guy from the MLB says, yeah, that's going to be a hard pass from us. And apparently early on had passed this on to the Justice Department, who did their investigation, determined who the guy was, found him, and by the time he said, I want 150 grand or I'm going to the news, the Justice Department knew who he was and filed charges. Okay, so in summary, guy is making money from exploit on Major League Baseball's website. Decides to circumvent his own illegal income to go for a bigger, quicker payday and gets his knees taken out from under him. Hubris at its best.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty dumb. I mean, that's pretty dumb. I mean, you got to assume they were, I mean, I guess if you're him, you got to assume they're eventually going to patch it.
You know, it's a fair question. I don't know. I was curious how that happened.
I didn't realize it was that easy. I didn't realize it was that easy. I mean, not that I have a great desire. I don't know. Listen, I don't like your, I don't like the strike zone. Can you do something about it?
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
The pace of play is too slow. Can you do something about it? Costs too much to go to games. Can you do something about it? I mean, there's so much, I don't know. There's so much wrong here.
I know. From what I understand from the Justice Department, the conversation did not start at the executive level. It was when the bug was submitted and then a payment was requested that probably someone on the vice president of information security or some kind of,
Okay.
low-level executive got involved. And my guess is the 150K number was chosen because for somebody with a vice president in their name, they might have discretionary spending in that range. Because this
really
could be.
I guess it depends on the company.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
My company, if you spend $1,000, they will be very will be heavily scrutinized. So I don't think. I mean, I don't know. Maybe at baseball they have $150,000 slush fund to spend on lunch or whatever, but
but certainly
no company I've worked for is that loose with money.
Right, but if he were to have asked for $1 million, that's not going to fall under anybody except maybe Zuckerberg's discretionary spending, I guess is my point. I guess he was hoping. This guy has proven that he doesn't have a great grasp on what's happening. But
yeah, I don't think the $150,000. I don't think that he's thinking the way that you're thinking, like, oh, I can get away with this because it's only $150,000. Maybe like Dr. Evil, he actually thinks this is a lot of money. Remember in Austin Powers is $1 million.
That's what I've been thinking about this whole time, is that movie. As I was researching and writing this article, I wanted Dr. Evil to be the header image. I knew there was no way that was going to go over, but I wanted that to be. But yeah,
because I mean, it's like you don't know what a big demand is. So maybe 100. But on the other hand, you're saying this is a small demand on one level and a huge demand on another level. So, because it's huge for a bug bounty, but small for what you think they think they could fly under the radar. I think that this person.
I've got the MLB tried to buy the documents tied to A-Rod's steroid use for around $1 million, and that wasn't inside the commissioner's office. That was just from the security spending. So that came out as somebody's discretionary spending, or would have if it had worked.
Yeah,
which it didn't.
But you say that was inside the commissioner's office. That was outside the commissioner's office.
It wasn't inside the commissioner's office. That was outside the commissioner's office.
Yeah,
so that was somebody outside the commissioner's office who thought that they could get $1 million into their discretionary spending without being noticed.
Maybe this person needs maybe this person just needs $150,000 for something. I mean,
right.
Sometimes people are very specific about how much they need to extort or steal. Like, maybe they owe $150,000 in loans or something.
On Archer, Cyril pretended to kidnap Cheryl and asked for a very specific and strange number because he owed it to somebody, or he had borrowed it from his 401k or something. No, from his IRA. So yeah, sometimes that happens. It's weird. But yeah, this is we talk too often about successful, high profile hacks and malware and that kind of thing. This was just a funny story of a guy whose hubris got the best of him. That I figured we had to have something a little goofy for Halloween, and that was my goofy story, because you've got to be kidding me. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. In addition to your free shipping, you get a whole lot more, including free music with Amazon Prime Music, free TV movies and documentaries with Amazon Prime Video, free games, and a free Twitch subscription to support the content creator of your choice with Amazon Prime Gaming, and a whole lot more. We have quick links to these features and more, a 30-day free trial if you're not already a subscriber, the ability to give it as a gift, and a lot more information, all by going to f5live.tv/prime. So, we know that Black Friday is coming. 32-inch TV is not going to be up $100. But if it's up 50, that's a huge percentage, right? But if it's on a high-end TV, a $2,500, 8K 65-inch, $100 increase isn't going to be a big deal. What's that work out to? 4%, right? So more expensive TVs aren't seeing as much of a problem. Smaller TVs are. Obviously, there was a lot of concern. Would we see TVs for Black Friday? Would we see any TV deals through the holidays at all? The answer is yes, but the prices will be higher than what they likely would have been last year. Although we might see some of that start to come down now that Florida has gotten into trying to help California out of their port issues. We've had our first ships show up here at the Port of Tampa, I think Friday. So maybe we'll see some inventory issues clear up with that, but we still have chip shortages. So this is going to be not just in televisions, but this is one of the core products that's being, affected.
So here's the thing. And I say this because now I have to live this for like the next month or so because we spend so much of our time in November writing about deals. It is something that we and all of our colleagues have to spend a lot of time on. There will always be deals, but the question is it actually a good deal? Right. So the price of something will go up, and then maybe they'll drop it down a tiny bit.
Right.
And so they will market that as a deal, but it may be more expensive than it was 6 months ago, even with the deal, or more expensive than it was a year ago, even with the deal. So that's something to keep in mind. There will be deals that may lead to you getting a television cheaper than it was the week before, but maybe not even. It may be that they've raised the price for a few days. So of course, I recommend price history tools like the Canalizer,
right?
Which is a good one for tracking prices on Amazon. But yeah, I mean, yet another product category where the price of things is gonna go up. I mean, there's shipping issues, and I mean, look, we are still in a global pandemic. Therefore, things are going to be affected. Plus, the demand for chips has gotten higher and higher. I saw a story the other day. I think it was the head of Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, who said that they would be chasing supply, that they expect chip manufacturers to be chasing supply, not demand. In other words, there would be more demand than supply of chips,
right,
for 5 to 10 years. So now it all depends on what type of chips we're talking about, but there's chips in everything. There's chips in your TV, and there's chips in your car, and there's chips in everything. So
yeah, if you watched our Roboticon coverage, the little light that we had with the logo on our desk, there's chips in that.
Right. So it calls attention to the fact that we need more local production of chips. I mean, speaking from the United States perspective, we need more chip manufacturing here, and there's been some attempt to do that, although it's not coming online overnight. And then the shipping issues, I feel like those will be resolved long before the manufacturing issues.
For sure. Especially now that stuff is being diverted to Florida as a bi-directional, solution to the problem. I think that's going to help a ton.
Also keep in mind that how many years away are we from self-driving trucks?
True.
I mean, it's probably not that close, but on the other hand,
depends on whether you're basing it on the video that that Nikola launched, or the reality of the fact that the truck was actually just heading downhill? You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
One of
my
my
understanding
favorite
from reading
stories
about
from the
these
last
things.
year.
I read, I end up periodically reading things about self-driving cars, and they're always so bullish about like next year it's all going to be self-driving cars. They're like so bullish about it, and the stuff that I see is always like the first sector to take over to be taken over is going to be trucking. I mean, that's what they're always saying is like shipping is going to be shipping is going to become is going to become automated drivers before individual drivers are going to give up their cars.
Sure.
So although or give up driving their cars, I should say. So you know, I mean, anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think the bottom line is yes, TV prices will be a bit higher. However, look, perhaps folks will also have saved some money on by not spending it on other things, depending on what their stance was during pandemic times. Like maybe they weren't going to the movies as much,
Sure.
maybe they weren't going to restaurants as much. So maybe that money that they didn't spend on restaurants, and they didn't spend on the movies, and they didn't spend on vacation, uh,
They
maybe they
didn't
can
spend on
afford to
hoarding
put
toilet
another.
paper.
Well, you're always going to need the toilet paper. I mean, eventually you'll need the toilet paper, right? But maybe they can afford the TV. I mean, I'm not. This is not to say that we don't want things to get cheaper than they
Right.
were, and it isn't kind of embarrassing to when you look and say, hey, wait, I'm paying more than it cost at one time. But you know what? When you buy any product, you're buying time with it, right? And life is only so long. So
True
if
enough.
you buy an OLED TV today and then it's $100 cheaper 3 months from now, or it was $100 cheaper 3 months ago and you missed it, you're still getting that time to enjoy that product.
True.
So, you know what? Enjoy, like, don't be, obviously, don't be frivolous, but, if something can change your experience, then do it. Like
Enjoy it.
last week, last week I saw Dune. Have you seen Dune yet?
I haven't.
So I think you and I've had discussions about like the death of movie theaters and what
Yeah.
streaming has meant to like, things like Black Widow where it kind of got hurt by streaming. And Dune actually was somewhat exceptional in that it did it did enough box office in the first weekend despite being on HBO Max that they commissioned the sequel, which is good because it's only the
Right.
first half of the book. But I'm very skeptical when directors say things like, "Oh, this is meant to be experienced on the big screen," because nobody ever admits that that they're
Sure.
nobody ever wants to admit, "Oh, this is just fine on your TV. It's just okay on your phone." But you know what? This movie looks really good. Like it's got some really epic landscapes and really epic looking stuff, and I could totally see why somebody would want to see this on a big screen. So, you know what? If you can go spend an extra, if you have to spend an extra $100 more than you might have to get yourself a really nice TV so that you can watch Dune on it and the next things that come after Dune, right? Um, then it's worth it.
You could also just
Also,
sit closer to the
because
television.
I suppose, but I'm also talking about the color quality too,
I
right?
know.
Right, like I watched it on. I'm not a big spender on TV, so my family and I we have like a 39-inch TV. It's not, it's 1080p and it is definitely not high quality color. And because we were never like, oh, we don't want to spend good money on this. Now we've talked about like, yeah, it might be time to get a larger television like 50-55 inches, get something that has 4K and has like better quality color.
Sure.
Maybe not OLED because OLED is so expensive, but like maybe one of those other quantum dot or something. Like, I get it why people would want to see something like Dune on a nice TV. So, you know what? If spending that extra $100, well, it's more than $100 in total, but spending a little bit more now,
Right.
and consider that it would have probably cost, if you had a family of 5, probably would have cost you around $100 to go see Dune in the movie theater anyway. Like, do it so you can enjoy some of these films that are coming out, like Dune, that really do look nice on a better TV, I'm sure. So anyway, uh, maybe having a good TV is a good investment.
Adam mentioned in the chat. He says people didn't want to watch Lord of the Rings in theater. The high frame rate Lord of the Rings in theaters. In fact, most theaters stopped supporting it. But watching it on a modern television is incredible. So sometimes, depending on what the technology is, sometimes watching it at home is a better experience than the theater anyway. So,
yes. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons why watching it at home is a better experience.
For sure. There's no sticky floors and popcorn's not $18.
Go way beyond, if you have children. I mean, there's so many other factors, right? So yes. And multiplexes do not necessarily all have wonderful projection and audio systems anyway. True. So, so anyway, long story short, yes, TVs will cost more. You will still be able to find okay prices on them. And I recommend that if you don't have a decent TV, it might be a good investment, because if you're really getting good use out of it, you know what? Enjoy it now, because there's always, with electronics, you can always wait. Things will always get cheaper. Things will always get better. Although TVs aren't getting appreciably better year to year.
True. Well, the point of the topic wasn't to do this, but coming up soon, you'll definitely want to keep track of Tom's Hardware and its sister sites.
Yes.
For deals.
Yes. So we don't do a lot of TV coverage. So Tom's Guide, our sister site, or Tech Radar, our sister site, will definitely already has good deals listed on TVs. We are more so have deals listed on monitors, which you could use as a TV.
Sure.
To watch things. You could buy a nice, beautiful 4K monitor and sit not that far from it and watch Dune in your web browser.
See, being closer.
But whatever you do, you got to watch Dune, because it looks fantastic.
Okay. I've got a nice 4K TV right off camera here, so we'll do that. Oh my goodness. Well, that is our show. Thank you to those of you who joined us live. We had a very active chat room tonight on both YouTube and on Twitch. Thank you for that. If you didn't join us live, would like to in the future, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, f5live.tv/join us. There you can participate in the show. Give us your feedback while we talk. If it's relevant, we will bring it up in the show. If it is not, we might skip you for a little while. So, but yeah, and if you can't join us live, that's okay too. PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all the ways to watch, listen, and follow along. We've got some stuff coming up, though November, if all goes well, should be smooth sailing as we head into the weirdness that is December. Not so much for Avram over at Tom's Hardware, but definitely for us over here, things should be pretty calm. November is a pretty rough month for Avram, but it's a little calm for us. So our shows should be pretty normal over the next couple of weeks, thank goodness. And so with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
There we go. And we will see you back next time. Ciao.